Greetings everybody, welcome to week 2 of the 4-week jam pack for early jazz saxophone. I'm so happy you're here. Thank you for joining me again. As with last week, you're going to need your instrument, plus you're going to need the PDF. If you don't see the PDF below this video, you can find that PDF at neilwelch.com/lessons. So in week number 1, we talked about the 4 foundational sounds in jazz music: the do, dit, dot, and da. Do, dit, dot, and da. We're going to continue using those syllable sounds this week, but we're now expanding them melodically to start introducing some new scales and new forms. So looking at our PDF, we're now on page 2 at letter E. So those of you who are playing B-flat instruments, you'll be able to follow along with me, even though I'm on alto here. Make sure you've got your appropriate PDF. Okay, here we go at letter E. This is the minor blues scale. Here's how it sounds. So the scale is probably familiar to a lot of you who have studied jazz music in the past. Even some of you who are just studying jazz music at the beginning here. It's a very common scale. It's used throughout jazz history. It's used by professional musicians and early jazz musicians alike. So the B-flat blues scale, as written here at letter E, is using articulation. So we have do, we have our line there on our first pitch. Then we have slur markings. Now this is really important that we approach this articulation by touching near the tip of our tongue, right at the tip of the reed, not inside the reed, right at the top of the reed. And I'm going ti-ya, ti-ya, ti-ya. So ta, ti-ya, ti-ya. So that ah is slurred. So tongue slur. We're going to talk a lot more about this in this exercise. Slowly, I'll do it one more time again at letter E. I encourage you to play along with me this time. Here we go at letter E. Make sure to take a big breath at the end of measure 2. 1, 2, 3. So now we're going to take that same scale at letter F, but we're going to start applying our do-dits. Watch out for the da on the very last measure of line 1, and then the very last measure of line 2. Here you go at letter F. As with last week, I've got my metronome. Those of you who were with me last week, we were working at quarter note equals 84. We're going to start at that same tempo here. Here we go, letter F. 1, 2, and. Repeat. So we ascended the scale, we descended the scale using 2 notes per pitch using the do-dit sound. Now when we're moving on to our next phrase here at 54, we're still at letter F, but now moving on to 54. What you're going to see is that we've got more active tonguing. Beat 2, beat 4 is going to have a short pitch, but you've also got this upbeat tonguing. So upbeat tonguing means I'm going to articulate with my tongue, again, right at the tip of the reed, but do it very, very lightly. Again, as with last week, we talked about making sure that we've got a triplet bass swing feel. Do, 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 do. So I'm playing do, do, dit, do, do, dit in this particular phrase. So let me start by playing it for you. And let's just have you listen this time. I'll play it. Here we go. Here's measure 54. some of you may notice that I'm articulating do, did. I'm actually articulating all three notes. You might ask yourself, well, why not do, and then the dit? Actually, why not write it like that? I find that when we're approaching these phrases melodically, connecting them with a slur, I think helps visually to make things a little bit smoother, and that's typically the way that we're going to be phrasing that. So even though we're using our tongue on all three notes in these phrases, visually we see that slur moving on the off beat to the on beat, and it's going to connect it a little bit more smoothly. You'll notice this visually in jazz music. Sometimes visually what's represented is a little bit different than what we might say or we might even hear in our mind. So jazz music, being an oral tradition based music, writing it down on a page is imperfect. Go by what you hear in your ear as well. So I'm thinking do dit, with that slur marking there. Here we go. Let's play 54 again. Let's do it 2 times now, folks. I'll turn my metronome on now. Still at 84. Measure number 54, same spot, 2 times. 1, 2, and. Moving on to 58 now, we're going to start skipping pitches. So you've noticed in all of our melodies so far, we've just gone one note to the next note in the scale, whether it's going up or it's going down. Now we're going to start actually moving a little bit more melodically by transitioning, sometimes going a little higher, sometimes a little bit lower. So here's 58. Now we're going to use a breath accent. So you notice we have that do at the end there. But instead of tonguing it, we're just going to do it with our air. So I like to say dot, do, wah, dot, do, wah. The wah to me kind of opens it up, even though again what's written is that da. But I'm using this with just my air. So let me play that one more time, just that first measure at 58. So again, I'm pushing it out. Make sure to support from the diaphragm. Upper part of the diaphragm tightens up a little bit. Don't over restrict it. Just give a little bit of pressure and push from the bottom of your diaphragm. Here we go at number 58. And let's do this 2 times together, folks. We're going to slow it down a little bit because we've got a little bit more of a tricky melody. If you feel like you're not getting this the first time, it's okay. You could even just stop and listen to me play it, listen back, and then try it again in the future. So we're at 72. 1 and 2 and 3 and... Repeat. I was using a little bit of inflection there, and that's something that I just did subconsciously as I started. You may have heard what's called a scoop. Now that's a different kind of inflection. I just did that naturally, kind of as I was feeling the bluesiness of this phrase. So even on small things like that, again, we talked about how jazz music being in an oral tradition, What's written down on the page is different than what players play sometimes, So if you hear me doing small inflections like that, you can even try and pick up on those. All right, let's move on now to letter G. So we're almost done with our exercises here for week 2. You're doing a great job. Now we're going to start expanding what we've just learned, building on our do, dit, dots, and das, as well as our blues sound. And we're going to play a very famous melody now that's called Sonnymoon for 2 by the great tenor saxophonist Sonny Rollins. So this is, I don't know, one of those tunes that if I'm at a jam session and someone calls a blues, it's, highly likely this tune might come up. So even though it looks a little simpler on the page, this is actually one of those tunes that we play a lot professionally. It's a great one to know. I'm going to sing the melody, and just like last week when we were working on our Duke Ellington tune C Jam Blues, this is another one that's what's called a riff-based melody. So we've got this 4-measure phrase that gets repeated 3 times. So I'll sing it now from the top. I'm not going to do it quite as slow as that last exercise. 1, 2, 3, and da 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 do dit da da do dit da do va da do dit. Now I'll do it one more time. There's some tricky rhythms at the end. There's a triplet in there, which is not something that we've done on this exercise. In my experience with students in my studio, the first couple measures of this tune are fine. It's that offbeat note on the 3rd measure, the and of 2, plus the triplet figure and just getting the timing of it in measure 4. So if you're having trouble with this at first, again, listen to me play it. I'll play it several times here. You can start the video again, maybe just in this spot, and listen again. I also encourage you, of course, just to practice it on your own. Listen to Sonny Rollins play this melody, and then try it again with the video. Okay, here we go at letter G. I'm going to do it without my metronome this time. Ba, da, 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 da. Really trying to feel that chord note pulse. 1, 2, 3 times. So 3 times on this melody equals out to 12 measures, which is 1 time through the standard blues form. So if you're playing this tune with other people, just like C Jam Blues from last week, you'd play it again 3 times. So I've got these do, dot, dot, these firmly planted quarter notes. At the end, the triplet on measure 4, you heard I slurred through that triplet. I'm just going to play measure 4 so you can hear that. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now again, in my own studio, what I find with my students is once they can get that measure down, they go, great, I got it. Well, you have to repeat the melody, right? So remember, doing a repeat within a melody is its own kind of phrase change. And make sure that when you're practicing these melodies, you're not only practicing these little 4-bar hunks, but you're also practicing at least through the repeat. So I might say play that 4th measure plus the 1st measure again. So here's an example. Again, measure number 4 plus measure number 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I might cycle that several times until I feel like I've done a great job on that and I'm more comfortable with it. All right, nice job, everybody. Thank you so much again for joining our Jam Pack 4 weeks of private lessons for beginning early jazz saxophone. I'm excited that you joined me on this journey here. We made it through our week number 2. I encourage you to practice this throughout the week on your own, coming back and working with the video when you need a little bit more refreshing with the sounds that you've heard, or you want a little bit of encouragement with someone to play along with. Nice job today. Thank you for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you on week 3. Thank you.